In this video, we're talking about what you should do instead of buying the PS5 Slim, whether or not this discounted PS5 hardware is worth it, and my favorite character of all time coming to Fortnite. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to PSReady. This is a crazy week for PlayStation because we got the PS5 Slim finally announced. I covered it in a video the day it happened, but largely, I'm not completely sold on this design for the console for a few reasons. There are some good things that come along with it, like being able to swap out the disk drive. Like if your disk drive ever breaks, you have that peace of mind knowing you can just go to Target or Amazon or Best Buy, pick up a new one for 80 bucks, pop it on the side, and you're good to go. That's awesome. It's also cool that they're giving people the capability to buy the digital model at launch and then just go get the disk drive whenever they want it later on. And it's nice to know that people who bought the launch PS5 like myself aren't missing out on any critical hardware upgrades. I mean, it's pretty much the exact same console except for some pretty glaring negatives if you ask me. The first one being the price, of course, increasing the price of the digital model from $400 to $450 despite the fact that they're making the console lighter, and objectively I think at least it looks worse than the current PS5. Also, you can't use any of the current plates that you have for your PS5. I don't know if they're going to release plates for this new one because there's 4 plates on it instead of 2. Also, the fact that there's no discount on the disc model, I think really it should have been $450 for the disc model and $400 for the digital, but Sony wants to keep making a profit on these consoles, so this is the way they're going to do it. I think there also might be a reduction in cooling just because of how much smaller it is. I'm curious if they're going to be able to fit the exact same fan inside the console with that 30% reduction in size. Also, it's the same size vertically, so it's either going to fit or not fit in your TV console depending on what you already have now. And I just think it's like ridiculous that the new stand is a $30 upgrade. Yes, I know I said I don't use the stand currently, but that's mainly because it's a cheap plastic stand that doesn't look good when it's connected to the console. Sony went through the trouble of redesigning the stand so that when you're standing up the console vertically, it's got this cool stainless steel style base, and selling something like that for 30 bucks, I don't know. I think they could have included it in the box for free, and really they should have, because the current PS5 comes with a stand, and the horizontal stand that they're making for this new one is pitiful. I can't tell if it's metal. In my last video I said it was like a metal twig thing that sort of like clips onto the front, but regardless, it shouldn't be something that you see from the front. You should only be able to see it from the back of the console, because if the console is meant to be laid horizontally, having it on the back would make it feel that way. Having it be this chintzy little thing you snap onto the front, I don't have any faith that that's going to keep the console from wobbling, A, and B, it just doesn't look very good. The one inarguably good upgrade that you're getting with this console is more onboard storage. It's going to have a terabyte versus whatever the PS5 has. I think it's like less than 800 or something like that, and you're going to be able to use the vast majority of that versus not being able to on the current PS5. But I think the play here, with all of that in mind, is to just buy the current PS5 and then pick up an SSD, okay? Like, hear me out here. The SSDs are getting cheaper every day. 2 terabyte SSDs can be bought for around 100 bucks now. So if you pick up a current PS5 and then just get the SSD, you're going to be paying 600 all in, but in that case, you'll have over 2.5 terabytes of usable storage, whereas spending that much on the current PS5 would get you around 3 terabytes. But I don't really think it's worth doing that, because if you go buy the current PS5, the one that wasn't just announced this week, you get a free game with it. Now, Sony has changed the rules a little bit where you have to be invited to get the free game, and I'm assuming they have a way of figuring out whether you bought a bundle or you bought the console on its own, because I told everyone to go buy the bundles that were on sale for 500 bucks at the time, because you'd get the free game with the bundle and then you get to select a free game from the list. It seems like Sony kind of figured that out, but still, if you go get the current PS5 with a game bundled with it for 500 bucks and you buy an SSD, I think you're still coming out on top versus buying this brand new PlayStation 5. And even when companies like Sony or Microsoft release consoles that it seems like no one wants, specifically the PS4 Pro or the Xbox One X back in the day, they're still notoriously difficult to find just because there's a few fans out there who want to be the first person to have that device day one. So if you don't have a PS5, I don't think it's worth waiting until this new one comes out to play games like Spider-Man 2 or the plethora of releases we've gotten over the past 3 years. So if you ask me, there's really no good reason to upgrade your PS5 to the PS5 Slim or or if you don't have one, to wait for this new one to come out. There are better deals out there on the current PS5, and to me at least, the current PS5 looks a lot better than the one that they're replacing it with, because as cool as it is being able to detach the disk drive, I don't think it looks very good. I don't like the square sort of like jut off it has, and just overall, even though it's thinner, it just looks a little bit cheaper to me because it is. It's cheaper for them to make, but they're not making the console any cheaper. Quite the opposite, they're making it more expensive, which again is super frustrating. So instead of buying the new PS5, I think you should go out and look for the current one and try and get a bundle, or make sure you buy it before October 20th so you get that free game with it. Speaking of PlayStation hardware though, one of the like kind of forgotten pieces of hardware that came out this year is definitely the PSVR 2. I did a video on it back when it came out, and I was honestly super impressed with it. At the time, I was playing games like Resident Evil Village, Pavlov, and Gran Turismo 7, and Gran Turismo was the one game where I was like, whoa, this feels like I am driving a car around the track. I felt like I was inside the Shelby Cobra that I was racing around the track. It was really cool and honestly made that game worth picking up for me. Then I tried out Resident Evil Village, and when I saw how much effort they put into the full conversion of that game to VR, I knew I had to pick that game up immediately the second I started playing it, because you know they had a demo available at launch. So I ran home, I bought the game, and I played it for hours that night, and it was just so cool being Ethan Winters in that setting, holding all the different guns, shooting the Lycans and everything like that. It was a really cool way to experience VR. Now, I kind of fell off pretty quickly after that, despite being excited for games like Switchback VR, and I kind of wanted to go back and play Horizon Call of the Mountain just because the bow combat was kind of fun. And the reason for that was really because it didn't seem like anyone was buying the thing, and there weren't any games announced for it that I was truly excited for. The only one that I really wanted to play was Switchback VR, and by the time that game came out, there was just so much other stuff to play that it didn't really seem like it was worth it. But for the few games that are released for it, I think the PSVR 2 is pretty dang cool, and it might be worth picking up on Amazon right now because it's on sale. So it's not the biggest sale, it's about the price of a game. They've dropped it to $500 from $550, which $550 is kind of crazy, but having it be the same price as the current PS5, I think that makes it a little bit more palatable, and I'd argue that's the price it should have always been. Of course, I think the true price point that this thing would be comfortable in is around $350, specifically because it doesn't come with a game, but by dropping it $50 to $500, you can buy a game for it with the headset and feel like you have a justified purchase on your hands. The only reason I would say have some caution though is that there aren't really a lot of VR games announced for the future. They did do a state of play that was focused on the PSVR 2 pretty soon after it came out, but we have not heard a peep about this headset from Sony since that PSVR 2 showcase. And when you look at their history of hardware, if they don't have one that pops off immediately, they are not afraid to completely abandon it from that point going forward. I mean, look at the PlayStation Vita, right? Like when that thing came out, it had one of the best launch lineups ever. It had a ton of games ready to go at launch, including a brand new Uncharted game and a brand new Wipeout game, and not even that was enough to get people to go pick it up. I'd argue that it wasn't the games as much as it was the price, because if you remember, the PS Vita was, I think, either $250 or $300 for the LTE version, but the real clincher was you had to buy a new memory card for it. It didn't use micro SD or memory stick or anything that people were used to or would have lying around. So if you took that $250 price tag, you automatically had to add on, I think, at least $40 for a memory card, because the internal storage was not big enough to even save one game to that console. So people saw that and they were like, I'm out, I'm not picking this thing up. And it did not take long at all for Sony to abandon it. I think the last true game that came out where Sony decided they were going to kill it off was Killzone Mercenary. I love that game. It's the only review copy I've ever gotten from Sony, which is kind of crazy. I played a ton of the multiplayer. I thought the story was great, and even an incredible game like that wasn't enough to get people to go out and buy a Vita. So at that point, Sony pulled the plug on it and kind of said, we're done with this thing. And they released a few games after that, but it was nothing too good. And I'm not gonna lie, it really seems like we're in that stage with the PSVR 2, right? Like the PSP, I think, outsold the PSVR 1 to a degree that's kind of insane, but I feel like Sony felt like they were onto something with the PSVR, and that's why we saw the PSVR 2 instead of them telling people to use that original headset. Because in the time period since the original headset came out, there were so many different advancements between the Oculus Quest 2, the Valve Index, and now we even have the Oculus Quest 3, and those are all incredible headsets. So Sony really had to either upgrade it or move on, and I guess I am a little bit glad that they decided to upgrade it and kind of stick with it for a little bit, just because those first days experiences I had with it were pretty damn phenomenal. So just like Resident Evil Village Village alone, I think was a good showcase of that hardware. But the biggest issue with VR, in my opinion, is that you can't really demo it. Seeing is believing, trying it out is believing, and there's no way to do it, right? You can't put a trailer up on the TV and really convey to people why they should be excited about a headset. But once you have someone over and put it on their head, that has sold so many Oculus Quest 2s to my friends, and I feel like it would have done the same for the PSVR 2 if Sony had actually supported this thing beyond the first couple months. But yeah, for $500, I think it might be worth trying out for the right person. You can play regular PS5 games in a movie theater setting. The new screen looks really damn good, and the VR games that are available for it, I think are all worth playing. So yeah, go over to Amazon if you want to pick one up. It's around $500. Third on my list here, I am so excited to talk about Fortnite today, and I have not been excited to talk about Fortnite in pretty much exactly a year, because the last time I talked about it was when they put Ash Williams from Evil Dead into the game, and I thought it was great. He came with an emote where he was stomping the cellar door. He has a chainsaw back bling, I'm pretty sure, and he has his boomstick, which is just awesome, and he just looks really good. It's the Evil Dead 2 Ash with his shirt all torn up. This year, man, for Fortnitemares, they totally one up themselves with this new Michael Myers skin. If you guys didn't know, I have a horror channel. It's just under my name, Jimmy Champagne. I cover pretty much every slasher franchise, whether we're talking Terrifier, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and of course, Halloween. Halloween is by far my most covered franchise there. I also made a couple fan films with my friend Cortland where we got a really good looking Michael Myers, and it was awesome. It was a really good experience leading up to Halloween, Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends. But yeah, I love Michael Myers. He's my favorite character of all time. If you guys couldn't tell, of course, by the awesome mask that I have back there and the Michael Myers hot toy I have right there. So I am very scrutinizing when I see a new Michael Myers merchandise property, because if you've seen Michael in Dead by Daylight, I'm just gonna be real, he looks terrible. But this new Fortnite skin, you can tell it was made by someone who really cares about the source material, because not only does the mask look great, which is an achievement of itself, I've talked about this on my other channel, go check it out, but the Michael Myers mask is just a total crapshoot on whether or not it's going to be good. The last trilogy was great. Every single mask was awesome. But before that, I think it was actually maybe just the first movie and Halloween 6 that really nailed the look of the mask. And beyond that, none of them really looked that good, to the point where there was a CGI mask in H2O. But this Fortnite mask looks really good. They got his coveralls looking great, but his emote is where it's at, because he plays the Halloween theme. He pulls out a little synthesizer like John Carpenter. He plays the high notes with his hand, and then halfway through, he pulls out a knife and plays the low notes, and it is perfect. There's no word on when he's going to be available at the time I'm filming this, but I would assume he'll be there around October 22nd, because that's when Ash came out last year. But yeah, someone responded to me on Twitter about this and was like, I'm sure John Carpenter is happy to get his check. I'm sure John Carpenter is excited to go buy Michael Myers in Fortnite, because if you didn't know, John Carpenter is a notoriously huge gamer. He loves games like Horizon and Fallout, and I feel like playing as Michael Myers in Fortnite is definitely something he would do. I also saw some tweets, one, for example, that was we're through the looking glass now, Halloween fans, and I just don't really get how you can be that cynical about Halloween, specifically because there's 13 movies in that franchise, and it's been a franchise ever since the second movie. I would argue, when Halloween 4 happened, that's the one that really blew up and made Michael Myers a household name, I would say. So yeah, I don't really see the need to be that cynical, and if I was a kid and they put Michael Myers in Fortnite, I would be begging my parents for their credit card to buy that skin, because it's just that damn cool. And the last thing I wanted to talk about today is this new set of earbuds from Sony. So we have the PlayStation Pulse Wireless Explorer earbuds allegedly coming out later this year. They're going to be gaming earbuds that connect in a special way with the PlayStation 5, but just like with the other InZone headsets, I think these new InZone earbuds that were just announced might be worth picking up instead, because they're $200, which is pretty pricey, but they have the exact same headphone speaker technology as the new WF-1000 Mark Vs, which I've heard are absolutely incredible from Sony. They come along with a dongle, so you can use them on your Steam Deck, your ROG Ally, or your PC, or your PlayStation 5, and they'll have latency-free audio, which is the whole point of getting gaming earbuds. Now, I know Sony's official ones are coming out later this year, but the video we've seen of them has a pretty big case. They look like they're huge and they're going to fit in your ears weird, and I think while these new InZone ones do look a little bit bigger than what we've seen from the WF-1000 1000 Mark Vs and AirPods Pro 2, for example. They look pretty good, and my InZone H7 is probably the best pair of headphones I've ever used for gaming. So yeah, having the drivers from the WF-1000 Mark Vs, I think that makes these headphones more than worth it. Anyway guys, that's all I've got for you today. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Remember to subscribe and set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.